Welcome to the Thomas and Collier Book Study number 1 Synchronous session for chapters 7 and 8. Today is Tuesday, November 12th. This is our last synchronous session together because we are finishing up the book. Here is today's agenda coming up on the screen. We always start, of course, with a welcome and overview of our work. This, by the way, is Anne-Marie Gunter, the World Languages Consultant at the Department of Public Instruction. I am working solo today. My colleague, Ivana Manthor-Anderson, was called away and cannot be with us for this afternoon's broadcast. That may mean you'll need to be a little extra patient with me as we work through our discussion and so forth today, but I thank you in advance for that. So today we're here to talk about and reflect on two chapters, Chapter 7, Visualizing Future Schools, and Chapter 8, Action Recommendations. Both chapters materials were, of course, in module number 9 because they kind of go together, and we thought that would be a bit easier for our work together. After that, we'll do a wrap up and next steps and specifically talk to you about what other tasks you need to complete in Canvas in order to finish out book study number 1 and get the credits. So, as we were saying before about the control panel, you should have your control panel. It may look a bit different depending on what browser you've chosen today or what device you're logged in on. We have discovered that it's very important for everyone to be logged in and able to see the screen that we're broadcasting and do the activities that we're involved in a webinar. This is because here in the audio pane, as you know, you have the choice to call in and have your audio, either the computer audio or via a phone call, which you will always have as an option. However, we have discovered that in order for the GoTo system to capture your participation and attendance, you must also be logged in. So regardless of how you have your audio, your computer audio or your phone call, you also must be logged in on a computer or device so that you can participate in our activities. Also remember that you have the hand icon to indicate you have audio. So let's go ahead and do an official sound check now that we're all in and we have things running the way we want them to in a broadcast. Please raise your hand if you can hear me broadcasting and sharing with you some details about our logistics today. All right, thank you so much. And finally, we have our questions box. Obviously, we use that to share any questions about technology like you just did. Again, thank you for that. And to access group announcements and links. As you know, during our synchronous session, this is also where you type in your answers if you want to be unmuted to share with the whole group. It is very helpful for us if you go ahead and type at least a partial answer of what you're going to say. That indicates to us that you're ready to be called on. And you can let us know too if you'd prefer we just read your response rather than unmute you and have you share it yourself. It's up to you though. All right. The last thing is the recording of this meeting will be posted. We always say approximately 1 week from today. We do try to get these posted much more quickly because we know there's sometimes a quick turnaround time. But always look for the recording and the slides from this meeting to be posted in the Canvas course that you access for your section. All right. With that, let's go ahead and move forward. This slide, of course, is just a reminder about our book study timeline. As I mentioned before, we are at our last synchronous session together. We may be here until 5:30 or not, we'll see. I do hope, given our weather today across the state, that you are someplace very safe and warm at this point, as it's supposed to get pretty chilly. But our last session day is November 12th. You remember that we had the sessions before and also that we did not meet on October 22nd, as that was sort of a catch-up time for the first half of the book. So let's go ahead and dive into Chapter 7 about visualizing future schools. Remember that when we have open-ended questions, I'd like for you to put your responses in the questions box and then raise your electronic hand to be unmuted to share your ideas. Again, this helps us track things better and make sure you're ready to share when you're unmuted. But let's begin, as we always do with the chapters, with a poll question. Based on your reading of Chapter 7, why is developing cognition a key to academic success? You can check all of these that apply. Is it that materials connect to meaning in the world? Is it that students feel respected and valued? Is it that students respond with creativity? Or is it that learning taps into multiple intelligences? I'll go ahead and launch that poll, and you can share your responses by clicking on the one you want. I see almost everyone has participated in the poll. And again, since you're logged in and participation is part of the grade for the synchronous sessions, we are hoping to get everyone to respond to this poll. All right, thank you for that. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the responses with everyone. Great. So you can see that developing cognition is a key to academic success because materials connect to meaning in the real world, and that's something that all of you said was true. Also, almost all of you said learning taps into multiple intelligences is another way that developing cognition is a key to academic success. And of course, over 80% of you each said that students respond with creativity and students feel respected and valued when you develop cognition and link it to academic success. So all of these were good answers to this question. So let's talk about our connections piece in chapter 7. We had the video from the Jordan Matthews High School class of 2018 graduation. You may recall that Jordan Matthews High School is in Chatham County Schools in rural North Carolina. And this video is one example of a dream come true for closing the gap for English learners, or ELLs. The class of 2018 at Jordan Matthews High School included the first cohort of students who began kindergarten together in the dual language immersion program there in Spanish. And it was a very interesting situation too, because they had co-valedictorians that year, both of whom were from the DLI class, and one of whom had an English speaking background and one of whom had a Spanish speaking background originally. So it was kind of a nice balance, and they made a video and shared this statewide, and it was shared nationwide as well through America's The Bilingual. So let's think about that and think about what you considered and reflected on when you watched that video as part of our connections piece for chapter 7. How did they, meaning Jordan Matthews High School and the Chatham County Schools and the students themselves, how did they bring the vision they had for their school to fruition? Like I said before, if you want to share your answer to that question, please go ahead and start typing it in the questions box, and then I will unmute you to share with us out loud and share as many details as you would like. All right, I see a couple people sharing right now. One person said, unfortunately, they did not see the link to the video in the Canvas course. Oh no, we'll double check that, but that they'll go ahead and watch it after our session. And that's always a good thing to do. It may be something you want to consider when you think about how do you champion the efforts at your school to close the gap for your ELLs, or to highlight the things that your programs do, like have graduates like this who are going on to very successful opportunities. For example, both of these co-valedictorians had full ride scholarships to a four-year university in North Carolina as a result of their hard work. All right, I'm looking for others' responses to how Chatham County Schools brought, how they brought this vision to fruition for their school. So how do they sort of exemplify or model what we read about in Chapter 7? Marcella, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so you can share. Go ahead. Go ahead, Marcella. She might be having some tech problems. So what Marcella said is that they envisioned a long-term program and made sure to continue supporting it through the years. And that's very true. We know in a dual language immersion or DLI program that the goal is K-12 always. And so you want opportunities not only in elementary school where most DLI programs begin, but for those students as they mature and move to middle school and then high school. That's certainly one of the things that's captured in this video and in the work that they've done in Chatham County Schools. Gabriella, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so you can share.
Well, I just feel like that having these students actually graduate, starting a bilingual program and really graduate all the way to high school is such an amazing success and such a triumph for them, because I've seen here in Asheville that how some kids, don't make it all the way through. They start the bilingual program, the dual immersion in kindergarten, but then you start losing kids, the classrooms get smaller, and it's just a shame because you want those kids to carry on the bilingual program all the way to high school to be truly bilingual and, being able to read and write and learn in two languages. So I think it's amazing what they've accomplished.
Yes, I agree. They really have shown great strides, and they stand as a model for all of us, not only in North Carolina, but across the country. We think about the tremendous growth in DLI programs, but also in the work we're doing for our Ls. We really have to consider what are the long-term goals. And of course, for us in K-12, our long-term goal is to think about, graduation for these students, truly closing those achievement gaps and making sure they make it to graduation, and then have a plan to move beyond into post-secondary study, the world of work, and all of those things we want for all students.
Right.
All right, I'm going to ask Catherine. I'm going to unmute her so she can share with us something that her school does, it looks like. Catherine, go ahead. Oh, and it's, by the way, Catherine Gavani.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I mentioned that we do have a high school success advocate who helps bridge the gap from high school to college, as well as one day each year. I don't know all the details, but I know it's highly celebrated in our district, where maybe graduating seniors in the EL or migrant ed program as well go to the local community college for a day of learning.
So you have a real continuation plan, if you will, that really gets them on track.
I think that it's been really effective, and I know it's celebrated with a lot of enthusiasm in our district. I haven't been a part of it, so I can't speak. I teach at the elementary level. But yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing.
Great. All right, Joanna, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead, Joanna. Oh, I see that she does not have a microphone, but what she said is, in Chatham County Schools, they offer a dual language program in all grades, and they offer the opportunity to earn the North Carolina Seal by Literacy, our global languages endorsement, upon graduation. And that's very true. In fact, all of the students from that original cohort in Chatham County Schools at Jordan Matthews High School who graduated earned their Seal by Literacy in Spanish. And that's significant, I think, for all of us. Sometimes we hear about the Seal by Literacy and people automatically assume that our DLI students would be the ones who would benefit the most. They certainly do benefit, but all students can benefit, including our English learners, whether they're in a DLI program or not. It's important for us to help them build literacy skills in two languages, English and another language, hopefully their home or first language, and then be recognized for that with that Seal of Biliteracy. All right, Giovanna, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so you can share. Go ahead.
Yes, it just surprised me, how some schools or people who go to administer the school, they closed some program because there was a bilingual program in Duplin County a few years ago, and because the principal who went there was a change and everything, and he didn't like the program, he just closed it. And I just wonder what would cause that principal to, close a program that was going to help all their students in the school building. It just puzzles me.
Well, that is something that's always difficult to understand. A number of decisions are made at our schools and in our programs and our districts that may not be clear to us. I know one of the things that we've talked about, in previous synchronous sessions, I know all of us have thought about clearly, is how do we advocate for our English learners and other students as well about the importance of being bilingual and biliterate, whether it's through a DLI program or any type of program. How do we emphasize that importance and that critical component of their education? And I think a number of you have spoken already during this book study about what you want to do or plan to do or are doing to make that clear. And don't forget, we have other supports as well. We talk about administrators and helping them understand what language programs really are, whether that's for English learners or for, just any learner. Don't forget that East Carolina University has a DLI administration certificate that actually educates our administrators who take that program online about
awesome.
the importance of those opportunities and what it means, for example, in a DLI program, because most of our administrators and even some of our colleagues, of course, don't come, first of all, from a language education background of any kind, whether it's English, ESL, or world language programs, but also most of them did not have an opportunity to learn language in the way we want students to learn it today, which is in a proficiency-based environment where they're building communication skills and using those skills. And so it is part of our responsibility, as we've discussed before, to educate our administrators and others about that.
Yeah, and we people who are bilingual around in this world might have to go jump in and take some administrator courses also to see if we can be placed in one of those schools and implement these programs, which are very excellent.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, thank you. Catherine, it looks like you have maybe some other things to add. Catherine Galvani. Go ahead and unmute.
Sure. I think I just heard some of the participants say when children are giving up on the biliteracy, or maybe even the last case with the principal. Unfortunately, I feel that sometimes people aren't as well informed and maybe thinking that if the student isn't achieving as high as non-dual language peers on standardized tests, that might be one of the reasons that students are dropping.
And it could be. That's why, again, it's important to sort of educate folks about things like the Thomas and Collier research. We've talked about the graph that shows how, a DLI program really closes the achievement gap for English learners. But we also have additional research from Thomas and Collier that talks about how, being in a DLI program closes the achievement gap for all students, and that by 5th grade, students are usually outperforming their peers who are in non-DLI programs, more traditional programs or monolingual programs, by at least one grade level and sometimes more. Now, it does take a little while to get there, and I know sometimes there's some hesitation early on when scores are not necessarily as outstanding as we would like to see on those statewide tests. But ultimately, sticking with a program, not only through elementary, but ultimately through K-12, yields the results we want to see with academic achievement.
One of the other things I mentioned was that I think in order to have a successful program like Jordan Matthews High School, it needs to be supported, as we've been saying, with the dual literacy or dual language, however that might be, but also through equitable programs permitting cultural responsiveness in schools, cultural and linguistic responsiveness.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things too that is discussed to some degree in the Thomas and Collier research, which of course does incorporate, by the way, Chatham County schools. They were one of the 7 districts in North Carolina in that original study. But you make a good point that there are other benefits and things we need to look at. And I happen to know, because I've seen Chatham County schools present about not only their DLI program, but also their ESL programs in general, that they have a very coordinated effort district-wide to support all students, whether they're English learners or not, whether they're in the DLI programs or not. And you're right, it really takes everyone working together to think about the overall benefits, particularly some of the things we've discussed about, like with the PRISM model here in this book study, which brings in that sociocultural component that you're talking about as well. All right, Sorilda, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so you can discuss. Oh, I see she's having tech problems. No worries. What Cerilda has shared is that their MEP program, or Migrant Education Program, in her district, which is in Robeson County, also has a day of collaboration with UNC Pembroke. And all of the MEP students get to experience the local college through the annual educational fair. So again, thinking about opportunities for making that vision a reality, and also reaching out to students across the K-12 spectrum so that they knew what opportunities await them as they continue their education and move into the adult world of work and careers and so forth. I do see someone who has a question. Veronique says, obviously for the 2 students we've heard about, they were in the news because of the fact they were co-valedictorians, but what about all the others? Well, actually there's good news about all the others too. In that first cohort that started kindergarten together, 16 of them finished together as 12th graders in the class of 2018. They all graduated from high school. They all earned the State Seal by Literacy, the Global Languages Endorsement. And my understanding is all of them had post-secondary plans. We mentioned that the co-valedictorians had scholarships that were full ride to some of our North Carolina universities. I think if you listen to that video pretty closely, they talk a little bit about some of the others. Most of them had college plans. Some of them also had scholarships and different things. And so they were quite successful. They were part of a much larger graduating class, of course, at Jordan Matthews High School. And I would encourage you to link over to that video and really hear about the rest of the students as well. If I'm remembering correctly, when we ran the newsletter article and so forth that Chatham County Schools had shared through their communications department, there were over 500 students who were graduating from Jordan Matthews High School, maybe a few more than that. But definitely in the hundreds, and they were quite pleased because of the results, not only for their students who were graduating on the DLI cohort, but all of their students, again, because of this coordinated effort we just talked about across their district in addressing students' needs and making sure they reach the goals like high school graduation and then continue on. All right. And I think we'll finish up with one comment from Jesus. His microphone is not working today, but what he says is the video itself that was in the connections component really made an impression on him. He said it really takes a village to raise a child, but it takes lots of open minds from that village to do things in a different way. And I think that's a very good point, Jesus. You know, when we talk about educating our English learners and using DLI programs and things, those are things that not everyone's familiar with. And as we've read in this book, not everyone really understands the research behind how to be successful with students who need extra work in learning English or who want to be in a program that's very different from what maybe an educator has experienced. So definitely it takes a village to raise a child, but you're right. Those village members have to have very open minds and want to see education in a different way for success for their students. All right, well, I'm cautious of our time, so let's go ahead and go on. Now, this kind of leaps from that because the authors encourage us to visualize our own dream school in chapter 7, to really think through what would it be like. And I'm sure as educators, we've all had that thought about, like, if I could put together the best version of everything I know about educating students, here's what it would be. So think about that for a moment. What vision do you have? And how are you planning to bring it to fruition yourself? I'll pause for a moment and let you start typing in as you need to. Catherine Galvane, I see your comments. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so you can share. Catherine, you should go ahead and be able to talk now.
Yes, I talked about this before, and I just feel that if we're not in, I know it says visualize your dream school. I'm thinking more, I guess, practical and just being able to promote biliteracy when we're not in a dual language school. But also, I think it's really, really, really important to bring world languages back in K through 5. I think our students and our staff are suffering across the board without it, and I think we need it to promote more learning about ourselves and the world, especially in our students and how we understand our ELs, our newcomers. I think having world languages gives us that added perspective and depth to our curriculums, as well as knowledge about the world. I think it's really important.
I think those are all good points. And as you know, our state standards support any type of language program, K-12, but it is a local decision to start those kinds of programs. And like you said, maybe perhaps to start a K-5 world language or modern language program again, you know, that's all based on local decisions at the school or at the district level. So if that's something that you think is important, that may be a next step for you in advocating for what you think should happen.
Thank you so much. I'd never really thought about it being a local decision, so I'm really glad to have had that discussion. Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, and that is one thing to keep in mind about North Carolina, and a number of states actually in the Southeast are structured that way. There are a lot of supports in place, but we are very much local control states. And so we have a lot of freedom locally to offer the types of programs that are chosen as right for our communities, whatever our communities are made of, and that kind of thing. So consider how you might use that information to help your students. All right. I see that Claire has a question. I'm going to go ahead and let her voice that, and then let's talk about an answer. So Claire, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, yeah, mine was a question. We have the 90-10 DL program at our school, and it's great. It goes grades K through 4, just one class in each grade level. So there are 6 classes then that have the dual language program in them. But this being my first dual language school that I've taught in, I'm not sure of the way that is the best way for ESL to be implemented in the program, because they have the students spread out, ESL students spread out throughout the classrooms. It's very difficult for us to push into the classrooms with limited teachers, ESL teachers. So we do a lot of pull out, and I'm wondering if that is beneficial, or should their ESL time be considered part of the classroom teacher instruction in a dual language classroom?
So the first answer to your question is actually the DLI program cannot be the only programming that an English learner is receiving. A DLI program cannot replace needed ESL services where a student has been assessed, and those kinds of services are deemed necessary. And that's part of the LIEP program. So I would encourage you to look at that, because those certainly English learners can be part of a DLI program, and that has great benefits for them. As I said, that DLI program cannot be the only service they are receiving if indeed they are in need of ESL services. There might be some others too that have some thoughts on that, about how ESL pullout or other types of programming for ESL from the LIEP chart that we've looked at before are used in their school. I'll look for that and unmute you if you have some thoughts on that. And I do see a couple folks who have some thoughts, but their mics are not set up right today. So Martha noted that she said, when we talk about Thomas and Collier's assertion that DLI programs save money by not needing additional ESL support staff, how does that work with what was just shared regarding ESL services for English learners? And so I want to emphasize that the reason Thomas and Collier say that DLI programs don't cost more is that because you are hiring always the same number of certified teachers to teach content. So for example, in a DLI program, at the elementary level, you have to have elementary certified teachers. And we talked a little bit before about how our districts, when they first institute a DLI program, very carefully make sure that when they have open positions to fill, which they get through teachers retiring or transitioning to another school or that kind of thing, that they just set it up so that they're hiring a teacher who can teach the content, in this case, elementary certification teachers, but in a language other than English, in the DLI program language. The funding for ESL support staff is separate from that. And again, I would refer you to your LIEP program and your Title III funding and some of the other things that come with ESL services in particular. And I can't say a whole lot about that because obviously that's not my area of expertise, being the world languages person for the state. That's also something you could email Ivana Manthrow or Anderson about if you wanted more details about your program. But DLI programs are more cost effective because, again, you're hiring the same number of content teachers. However, ESL services are separate from that, as we know. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look and see what everybody else is thinking here. Christina, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so you can share what you've got on your mind today. Please go ahead.
Hi, good. Okay, my microphone's working. I was having issues with it.
You're good to go.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, for me, obviously, and I think it's for everyone. The vision is to truly value differences in all the students, more than just saying that we value differences, and having designated days where we value differences, and as part of anti-bullying campaigns, but actually making education accessible to kids, all kids, no matter what their abilities. I come from special ed, so for me, that's always been a factor, but trying to understand the needs of English language learners has helped tremendously, and seeing how effective programs and supporting those programs through materials and staffing and training to continue support, being really intentional in our decisions instead of just trying to say, okay, well, we offer this to these kids, is really important. And I've just heard too much people saying, well, not all students are A students, or, oh, well, it's just a language thing. It's just going to be the way it is for them. It's probably, they're never going to catch up. In this process of learning more, I've definitely seen that that's not the case. And you just have to be really intentional in your decisions. So for me, I'm just going to continue to advocate for supporting intentional decisions in all those areas that will actually make a difference in those students' lives.
Yeah, and that's a really good point about how teachers working together like that make sure that all students get served, and you get, what I refer to as things like coordinated services or wraparound services. You mentioned, anti-bullying campaigns and different teachers weighing in with their expertise who help sometimes specific students, like if you're an ESL teacher or an EC teacher, but also those techniques and that teacher as a resource person are there for all students.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to read a couple more comments. Louisa says that her vision is about building capacity and making some teachers aware of the resources out there in students' native language so they can access the content in both the native and the second language that they're learning. Students should be proud of their heritage, and if teachers show respect for it, students will feel more comfortable. That's a great point. All right. Let's see who else would like to share today.
Would you mind muting me again?
Oh, sure. There you go. Sorry. All right. Well, don't forget too, when we're on together like this, when I unmute you, you can also mute yourself if you want to, especially if you think you're going to talk later, but I can mute you from this side as well. I know some systems don't allow for self-muting for some reason. So, all right. How about Liz? Let's go ahead. I will unmute you so that you can share with us what you're thinking. Go ahead. All right. Looks like she's having trouble with her technology today too. Oh, we just have a whole day of it, I think. But that's okay. What she wanted to share is that she feels like she has fewer language learners than most who are on the line today. She has a total of 40 as her biggest number at her school. But there's little interest in setting up a DLI program or even a regular class for English learners due to scheduling problems and an emphasis on testing where for ELs and many other factors. So she said her vision is to have a program where we could do more pairing in the regular classrooms, where we had enough ESL teachers to have pullouts for all of our teachers, and where all the teachers had PD in differentiation sponsored by the school and supported by her as the ESL teacher. That's a great idea too, because now we're also talking about making sure that our colleagues have the support they need to serve students really well. And again, no matter who those students are, having that background information and getting help from each other is always a good way for us to learn as educators. Gabriella, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so you can share. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I've worked at different bilingual schools in Mexico, and I was a transitional bilingual teacher in Chicago, and so I think it reminds me of good things, that I've seen happen. And one of the main things I think I want to bring in my current position is to have more parent involvement, to educate parents, to help their children at home, to help them understand how crucial they are in their kids' education, and have them be a more active part of the school. And the kids, um, education at home, and that whatever happens in the home, it's supporting what we do in the school. And the other thing that I want to see is more training and more training for classroom teachers that are the ones who have the most part of the day with our students. I see them maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, but they have those teachers for the rest of the day. So for me, it's crucial that they are well trained, and that they are really encouraging those students to grow and to learn and be excited about learning. And I think literacy in both languages, especially for our ESL kids, is so important, and it helps them. And I think a lot of parents don't realize that, and they think it's going to be harder for the student, and they want them to focus on just learning English, and they put their home language aside. And I think that's really not good. And I'm trying to get more awareness, I guess, and more involvement with the parents and the kids.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we know we want certainly parental involvement in general in school, but also when we have parents who are English learners, it can be difficult to communicate with them about, the importance of, for example, DLI program, or how their students should be learning to read and write also in their home language. I know one of the things we often hear from parents who are English learners is that they are very concerned that their children learn English. And so they're worried sometimes about other programs like heritage language programs or DLI, because they fear that, being in those programs will mean their children won't learn English as quickly or as well. And again, like you said, we have to educate about the benefits of DLI or heritage language programs, or just making sure students develop literacy skills in two languages. That's not something everyone knows, and so we have to educate.
And I think also highlighting their cultural, bringing more of their culture into our classrooms and to the whole school, so that they feel welcome and they feel valued. That we value their background, their culture, their customs, their language, and providing that sense of pride in being bicultural.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always critical as well. Helen is chiming in. She said she would like to share in writing that her vision is to have the best prepared teachers working in DLI programs. So kind of getting back to having well-trained peers and colleagues to help. She said, unfortunately, she doesn't think right now all teachers are fully prepared to conduct DLI instruction, or perhaps even ESL instruction. And so she would bring her vision to fruition of having well-versed teachers in these skills, by advocating for professional development to be provided to teachers at the district level. So again, making sure all of our colleagues have that knowledge and understanding. All right, Emily Golightly, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute you so you can share. Please go ahead.
The game. It's like a dinner. It's like a soccer dinner. So I wasn't going to go to that.
Oop. I think we've got some background noise with her. Carlos wants to share, though he's on the road right now. He said one thing that concerns him, being a high school teacher, is where do high school newcomers fit in all of dual language immersion education? The study's results show a wide range of students K-12, but it's very unlikely that we can see the growth in language acquisition if a student comes to American schools in 9th or 10th grade compared to a K-12 student. And you're right. I think some of the Thomson Collier research speaks directly to that. Now, to your question about DLI, in fact, we have many DLI programs at the secondary level, both middle school and high school, who actually welcome newcomer students because they would probably have the certainly verbal skills needed to be successful in the DLI program, and that would allow them to be placed directly into classes where the language of instruction is one that they already understand. Of course, there are many concerns that we have for our newcomer students in order for them to be successful, including things like how much formal instruction have they had prior to coming to us, and do they, for example, have they had the opportunity to learn how to read and write in their first language? It varies by student, but of course, joining a DLI program or joining the cohort of students who goes in DLI program is one option for newcomers at the high school level. Another option is those heritage language courses we've talked about before, which are designed specifically for native speakers of a language. And we can do them in any language, but that helps them quickly build literacy skills in their first language, and then that helps them bridge into more advanced language classes for certain with their English-speaking peers, but also other types of classes, including things like DLI programs and other opportunities. All right. Jesus has also continued. He said the key factor for him is the sense that teachers, parents, community members, stakeholders, all of those groups could see beyond their own comfort zone and set aside differences, stereotypes, etc., and do whatever it may take to do what really works for students' own sake and truly for our whole nation. And that's a really good point, Jesus, and I think gets back to your original comment about it takes a village to raise a child, but also, as you said before, it takes a village with open-minded individuals who are ready to think about education differently than what they experienced. All right. So let's go take a couple more comments and then we'll move on, given our time. Cyrilda, you look like you've got some things to say. I will go ahead and unmute you so you can share.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So on a really basic level, I've seen many schools in just desperation place Spanish-speaking students in a Spanish class, and then use the Spanish teacher to try to help get them some content area learning in Spanish, just because they don't speak any other language, and they use those teachers to help the non-Spanish speaking EL staff, just out of desperation. But if they could use that example when there are successes there, it would help them to push the need for the dual language learning, instead of them trying to force them to, in a couple of semesters, to learn English, instead of teaching them in the language they understand and then having them acquire the English along the way.
Yeah, and there are all kinds of local solutions like that that a school
not
might
a good
try.
solution, but
well, sometimes in desperation we do things. I mean, we know things like, we don't want to use students as translators and things in meetings, but there are a lot of things we can do to help support each other as teachers and as educators that can help us bridge those gaps, as you said. All right. I think we'll take one final comment. Rachel, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so you can share.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I had noted about my vision, I guess, would be a school where students collaborate and experience each other's cultures and differing languages. But realistically, I do hope to cultivate more L1 development among our English language learners at the high school level, and also encourage the native English speaking students who are taking world languages, Spanish in our case, to communicate and collaborate with our English language learners who are mostly Spanish speaking at our school. So that way they are able to share cross-culturally and linguistically. The Spanish speakers can learn more from the native English speakers and vice versa. That's something that we hope to continue to develop at my high school.
Yeah, there's always opportunity for more development, especially as we really think about the visions we have and how we might bring that to fruition, just like it talked about in this chapter. There's a lot of work to be done out there, I think, and it sounds like almost all of you have a really good idea of how to do that work, those next steps in that work for your students. All right, so let's go ahead and go on. Again, I am conscious of our time. Do you have any additional thoughts and questions about Chapter 7 that we haven't already shared? And I'm going to address one thing too, because I saw this come up early, and this is more of a technical question about Chapter 7 or Module 9 than anything. As I mentioned, the video of the Jordan Matthews High School graduating class of 2018 was linked. It's actually a YouTube video that their district made available, put out publicly, and so that's linked. There are also some other videos in each of the chapters, as you saw, and someone was asking about why aren't those videos activated. It says coming soon, and of course there's a transcript of what will be in that video, but there have been some technical issues with those videos, and so our plan is for those videos to release them with the self-paced course version of this Thomas and Collier book study #1. So those will not be available to us, but they will be available later, so don't worry. What else would you like to share about your thoughts and questions from Chapter 7 or Module 9? All right. I'm looking for anybody who wants to share additional thoughts here, or we can just move on if we need to. Okay, maybe we're all good with Chapter 7 for now. So let's go on to Chapter 8. And Chapter 8 was full of action recommendations, some of which I think were probably supportive of each other, and get back to what I see a number of you mentioning in the comments box, which is that it's important to educate everyone, including our administrators and other stakeholders who are the ones who make the decisions in a locally controlled state like North Carolina. So let's talk about those 12 action steps from Chapter 8. And I want you to think about this for you. What is true for you about those 12 action steps suggested by our authors, Thomas and Collier? And again, you can check all that apply. Read these over carefully, and I'll go ahead and launch the poll for us. All right, let's go ahead and finish sharing what's true for you. I'm looking for us to finish up our voting. Make sure everyone gets their thoughts recorded on this poll. We'll close out in 10 seconds. All right, we'll close and share. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at the responses. It looks like over half of you said that this is true for all of you. So the strongest responses are 78% of you said that the 12 action steps are good to share with others for reflection. And I think that's a good point, especially given the amount of discussion we've had throughout this book study series on educating others and educating administrators and other stakeholders. Gives them something to think about. Also, 74% of you also said that the 12 action steps are very thought-provoking and that they will help you advocate for solid English learner education, which is significant. 59% of you said the 12 action steps should be implemented in small, thoughtful steps. It's always a good plan for things as you're beginning them. Small, measurable goals and steps is good. And finally, 59% of you also said that the 12 action steps will help you advocate for DLI education. And with that, I wanted to share too a question that came up because Helen had wanted to know, is there such a thing as the ideal model for DLI with certain instructional time? And again, being a local control state and looking at the research and so forth, it depends on each DLI program or each local community making the decision about what is ideal for them and the way they're serving students. And that includes all of their students in the DLI program or across the district. So there's no ideal schedule or model. There's just variations on that that work well in different settings. It's one of the reasons why, for example, we encourage book studies like this for open discussion, as well as having like the North Carolina DLI directory so that people can reach out to others and find out what's working for them and how they might adapt that information for their own environment. So having shared that, I'm going to call on folks who said that they have something to share regarding this. So, okay, Rachel, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you and you can share. There you are.
Hi, I had just noted that I do agree with all of those in the poll question, and that there is a lot of work to do for sure, but I do hope we can continue to make sure our English language learners are successful throughout their school careers so that they can be successful beyond in a career and in life. So that's ultimately something that we want to, that we all should want as a goal for our English language learners at whatever level we are.
Very true. We want success for all of our students. Catherine had something similar to say, although she had to log off, she said because of the road conditions she's experiencing in her part of the state. But she said, you know, teaching adults is different than teaching kids. And so as we advocate more and more among our colleagues for equity-based approaches and for our districts for the types of programming we'd like to see for English learners, we really need to think about the right kind of professional development or PD for English learner, DLI, and other teachers about advocacy when talking to peers and district leaders. And that's a good segue into kind of our conversation here about the connections in Chapter 8. You know, there's a whole series of professional organizations that were listed there and that you could explore their websites and their conferences and the different resources that they make available, including the ones you see pictured here. Carolina TESOL, of course, is our state organization. linked to TESOL International for Teachers of English for Speakers of Other Languages. We also have the National Association of English Learner Program Administrators and La Cosecha as national organizations, as well as ACTFL, the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages, and the state version of ACTFL, which is FLANC, the Foreign Language Association of North Carolina. In addition, we have several other things listed here. We talked briefly before about East Carolina University, or ECU's College of Education DLI Administrator Certificate. So there was a way to get more information about that. And of course, we have all of the work around growing success for ELs that this book study is a part of. So the question is, how will you get involved with these professional organizations or others, or maybe how are you already involved with these organizations? So again, I'll look for things here. Oops. And someone is reminding me I have not yet moved off of our slides. There we go. There you go, is our professional organization. So again, the question is, how will you get involved with these professional organizations, or how are you already involved with professional organizations? All right, looks like Gabriella has something to share. Gabriella, I'll go ahead and unmute you.
Well, one thing I would love is for classroom teachers to go with me to either a FLANC conference or a TESOL conference. I think a lot of the things that we see there would be great. It would provide them with the tools, and it would make them understand more of what happens and how a child learns a second language. And I would love for that to happen. And the booklet, the Growing Success for ELs, for example, that I got at one of the conferences last year, I've been sharing some of that information with the classroom teachers, and I know some of them are very receptive because they want to have those tools and understand more how kids learn and how they can help them in the classroom. So that would be for me the main thing, to have more classroom teachers who have large number of ELLs in their classroom come to these conferences.
Yeah, that's a really good point too about, having colleagues go with you to some conferences, whether it's state conferences, regional conferences, or national conferences. When you go to a conference like that together as teachers, you're all getting professional learning, and you can also share what you're learning in different sessions if you attend different sessions, or sort of have goals that where you share back later on, either with the people who accompany you or back in your school.
Yeah. And then whatever we learn, to be able to come back to the school and share it with the other teachers that were not able to join and to attend those conferences. I think that would be great because it would spread more of the information and the training and the tools for everybody.
Yes, definitely. All right. I'm going to go ahead and switch off to some others who are commenting about their work here. Let's see. Shweta, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so you can talk. Go ahead.
Yeah, hello everyone. Hi. Yeah, so basically I was actually I was really excited this fall, but I missed out on attending, unfortunately, because of the early registration, having completed earlier for the TESOL conference, for spring TESOL conference. So I think the NCDPI is now offering me another opportunity to attend the spring conference, the TESOL conference in spring now. So that's one opportunity I'm really looking forward to. But again, it's all about time, and it's all about how and what works in your schedule. But I, as a teacher, I'm trying the very level best that I could bring to my school with all this possible information and growth, the PD that we learn and opportunities that we get, because there's so much happening. Like, I'm such a listener now that I'm listening to all these amazing people on this forum, and I have really learned so much. So all this amazing information is happening at our state, and it needs to be communicated in the right way, in the right manner, with an open mind to the people who work with us locally at our school level. So it is very pertinent. So I'm trying very, very hard that I could possibly go, and some of the people from my school could possibly attend, but unfortunately that's not happening. So I'm the only ESL teacher, and I'm really pushing myself, and I'm pushing hard.
Well, and doing that kind of thing, and setting the example of attending conferences and being professionally active like that is a good model for everyone. And so you're pushing hard means that others are seeing that. That is a good example to them, and they might join you, or your district might also get the message and provide you opportunities to go to professional development like that, especially if you can share with them how you might bring things back and share with other teachers.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Catherine would like to share, but she does have a mic. So what she wanted to share was she attended the actual conference last year and found it very helpful as an L teacher. She was able to bring back strategies for the world language teachers that were also relevant in L education. And it helped her understand that solid language instruction translates, if you will, across languages. And that's very true. We can learn so much from each other, whether we come from an ESL teaching background, a world language teaching background, or some other background. And so it's important to think about what can we learn from each other, and when we look at our similarities as well as our differences, what does that tell us about teaching language and language acquisition from different perspectives? So a lot to consider there. All right. Kimberly, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so you can share with us. Oh, it looks like she's having a tech problem. So what she said is she's already a member of a few of these organizations, and she follows some of them on LinkedIn and other social media outlets. So that's a good point too. They have websites, but they have other things as well. And I'm going to unmute Giovanna so she can talk to us a little bit about that too. Giovanna? Oh, unfortunately, we've got quite an echo on her audio, but she said, again, she follows some of these organizations on social media, including Facebook pages from some of these organizations. I know, for example, that Flank has a Facebook page, ACTFL has a Facebook page, and she says she also follows them on Twitter. And a number of these organizations have a Twitter feed where they are sharing information. So it's always good to follow along on those as well. A lot of times organizations will post information on social media outlets, not only about their professional development conferences, but also about classroom resources and things like that. All right. I see a couple people. Helen, I'm going to unmute you so you can share your thoughts. Go ahead.
I hope you can hear me. My voice is not helping me much today.
Oh, you sound good. Go ahead.
I just want to share that there's a program called Start Talk, and they provide resources and training to teachers who teach critical languages, Chinese, Urdu, Arabic, and others. So the Urdu teachers in my school attended a summer institute this past summer with lots of knowledge about the teaching of languages, and it really helped them in the implementation of the dual language program that we have for Urdu.
Yes, and Star Talk is another resource we probably should add. Star Talk, as she said, is a grant-funded organization. It's actually funded through our United States Department of Defense, and is specifically for the development of classroom materials and pedagogical skills or teaching skills in what we sometimes refer to as less commonly taught languages like Urdu, but what they define as critical needs languages as part, again, of our federal Department of Defense. And so most of the Star Talk languages, for example, Arabic, Chinese, Urdu that was mentioned here, we do in fact have in North Carolina, either as programs in world languages or certainly with our students across the state who speak those languages in their homes and many other languages as well. So that's another source for us as far as classroom resources and information. All right, Joanna, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you if your microphone is working so you can share what you've got in the question box. Go ahead. All right. Her mic is still not working, but what she said is she'd like to focus on helping colleagues make their instruction more meaningful and comprehensible to their English learners. And although she doesn't have much formal training in ESL as a Spanish world language teacher, she sees that there are instructional techniques that she has adopted as a world language teacher that can be transferred to other subjects and educators and helping them to produce comprehensible input for their English learners. And again, that's a good point to think about what we can share as language educators that will help us. Also, we've got someone mentioning that they'd like to attend the SCOLT conference this spring. SCOLT is the Southern Conference on Language Teaching that North Carolina belongs to as part of their work. So that's the go-between between FLANC and ACTFL, if you will. And she mentioned that there might be, for example, DPI sponsorships through the ESL and Title III program. We certainly hope that there will be DPI sponsorships available to the SCOLT conference and other conferences in the spring. And so it's important for all of us to stay tuned for that information. And I would encourage you always to sign up for our listservs to hear about things like DPI sponsorship opportunities where you can apply to get your registration and travel to these conferences covered. And as a result, then create a product to give back to help us here in North Carolina, or just to hear about these conferences and the other professional development opportunities that come from these groups, because those are often shared on our listservs. So always sign up for the listservs to get that information. I'm conscious of our time. I'll wrap up on this part with just one comment, again from someone who may or may not have a mic active today. One person said they would love to be part of the DLI Administrator Certificate offered by ECU, East Carolina University. She thinks it would give her more sound knowledge about DLI and help her connect better with other people involved in organization of DLI programs, and also then better support the teachers that she works with. Information about the ECU program is, of course, in our Canvas course, and so I would encourage anyone, if you're curious about that or any of these other organizations, to click on those links and really explore those opportunities. Our Canvas course will be open through December, so you will have a chance to see those and explore them and, link to them as you need to, so that you can think about your own professional growth with them. All right. So I'm looking at our time. I know we need to finish up. What I'd like for you to do right now, because we've already kind of talked about the 12 action steps and so forth, is think about, when it comes to those 12 action steps, what questions do you still have? So that last one, what questions do you still have about that, or in chapter 8? Go ahead and put those in the question box now, and I'll pause for a moment for you to do that. Looks like everyone may have gone quiet for the evening. That's okay. Well, I do want us to continue to think about those 12 action steps, which ones you'll do next, and what questions you still have, although I think most of you have a pretty good idea of how you want to move forward at this point. Do you have any remaining questions or thoughts about Chapter 8 in general, or about Module 9? Rachel has a thought she'd like to share, so she can go ahead and unmute herself. She's just self-muted.
I was just going to share that I do hope to encourage the parents of my ELs to develop the L1 with their kids, as it's super important in overall language development. So even at the high school level, like them speaking to their kids and the L1 is super important.
Very true. And now from this book study, of course, we've even seen the research that backs that up that we can share. So that's always helpful. Gabriella, I'm going to go ahead, and you're self-muted, so you can unmute and share what you'd like to.
Well, I feel like I'm pretty successful with my students, you know, when their home language is very strong, but I still feel like I need more tools or more ways or to help students that, come and they're not literate, and trying to help them also with their classwork. I have currently a student, a fourth grader, who came a year ago and came with no reading or writing skills. And so I'm trying to develop his writing and reading in Spanish and in English, but it's hard, when and the parents don't know how to read and write either, so they can't help him much at home. In that respect, they're very good parents. They help him in many other ways, but I wish I had more tools or more ways to help those students that we're seeing more and more. I've been teaching for a long time, and I've seen this. I think in the past maybe less than 10 years that we're getting more and more students who are not literate. And I had a few years ago an eighth grader from, I think it was Honduras, who was in eighth grade and didn't even know how to read and write. So it was like teaching him to read and write and math, and it's hard. It's heartbreaking because they want to learn, and it's just hard. How do you catch them up with getting them to what they need, not just in English, but also teaching them math and content area and science, and that's the big thing for me right now.
Yes, that is always a challenge. Um, we will always have students, I think, who unfortunately have not had the opportunity for formal instruction, like you're saying. And so they're just establishing literacy in their first language, which they will then be able to transfer those skills over to other languages, of course, but they are starting at a different point than some of our other students who are English
And
learners.
when they're young, I see when they're younger, it's a lot easier. They adapt quicker. But as they are older, it's harder for them, and I just wish I had more tools and more ways of how to help them speed up that process, and how to help them grow, and what tools to give them to develop that maybe faster, if not faster, maybe stronger. I don't know.
Yes, and those are good things to think about. I do know that part of the Growing Success for L's workshops and things that are often offered during the summer, um, helping newcomers, particularly newcomers who don't have literacy skills in their home language yet, has been one of the topics. And so that might be a place to get more information about that. And for all of us to think about, what else is out there in our communities? Someone talked about parents not being, for example, literate in their home language, and how do you help a parent who wants to help their child? And again, there are often opportunities for parents or people of any age and any role to learn English and to learn other languages as well. So that's one of those things that to think about, like, what are community resources are out there? And as Veronica was commenting as well, how do we tackle such a complex issue? I also wanted to share what a couple of others have been sharing in the questions box, but they don't have a mic, so they just wanted me to share it aloud. And it kind of goes along with what we're saying. Anna and Christina both focused in on action step number 11. And they said that really spoke to them because thinking about students in regards to enrichment when it comes to language acquisition and language instruction rather than remediation is always important. They're talking about when you design programs for English learners, you want to look at learners as students who are ready to learn, not students who are broken or need fixing, because they don't need fixing. What they need is the opportunity and support to maintain their academic and cognitive development while enriching themselves by adding English to their language repertoire. And that's really important, and I think probably sums up pretty well from Christina and Anna about what we've been talking about in this book study, particularly with the Thomas and Collier research. Stephanie, I'm going to unmute you so you can share what you have as well. Go ahead. All right. Well, Stephanie she thinks there are a lot of times where there are so many resources out there that general education teachers really struggle with knowing the ones that are the best to use. So the classes and professional development opportunities need to be attended, but not only by ESL teachers and not just shared amongst ESL teachers. So again, another call to share with our colleagues always about what resources and strategies we use with language learners. Well, given our time, I know we need to wrap up for tonight. Let's go ahead and do this poll question. What next steps will you take based on this whole book study? And I want you to think about our book study in its entirety, not just the chapters for tonight, and share your responses there. Please go ahead. All right, go ahead and share what next steps you'll take based on this book study. All right, we'll close out in 10 seconds on this one. All right, and I'll share the responses. So almost everyone, 96% of you, said that you will share the Blue Book and what you learned with others, as well as initiating or continuing discussions among colleagues about this content in the book study. So that's wonderful to hear. Just over half of you also said you will analyze and apply EL data to EL programming, and you will develop a plan to advocate for change. And last but not least, 39% of you said you will analyze and apply EL legislation in EL programming. Great. So it sounds like we've got a lot to do, but a lot of good plans. This is just some reminders. We wanted to remind you that we are grading the synchronous sessions, as you know. And if you're earning the 2 CEUs, you also have reflection questions and quizzes to do on the chapters. So those are still to finish up. Though this is our last synchronous session, you still have time, of course, to finish these items. So don't forget our wrap up and next steps. We want you to complete any remaining makeup assignments for synchronous sessions 3 through 6. We did close out synchronous sessions 1 and 2 because almost everyone had posted, and we'd given a deadline of, I believe, October 31st for that Halloween. So we passed that a while ago. But if you still want to do any makeup assignments for synchronous sessions that you missed 3 through 6, you can do that. Anyone can. Also, if you are earning 2 CEUs, be sure you finished up all your quizzes and all your discussion forums. And then we are going to share a survey with you for book study number 1, just to get feedback. And we'll want you to complete that by December 10th. That may seem a long ways away, but it seems like time goes quickly as we approach the holidays and get everything done with our students to close out the calendar year and get started in the new year. So look for that survey soon. We'll send a reminder about the final survey, as well as a reminder about the makeup assignments and things to get finished. Is part of our follow-up announcement for this broadcast. And I do see people asking, is this the last session? It is, in fact, the last synchronous session. So this is the last time we'll be together as a group doing this. But if you are in the 2CEU course, of course, we're still continuing the conversation with our discussion forums. So you can still post there or go read others' posts and give them feedback and input on what they're sharing. And of course, if you're in the 1CEU section, you have a Canvas course as well. And so everyone still has access to things like the professional organizations we talked about tonight and the materials and things that we've used together. That will be open through at least mid-December to you, but we do want everybody to finish up their makeup assignments and eventually this survey by December 10th, so that we can finish out the grading for the year, and that process can take place within our statewide system so that you get your CEU certificate. And I'm thank you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate you staying on, especially I know some of you are in kind of a situation where the weather is not great, but we appreciate you staying on and sharing your ideas tonight. We will, of course, post this recording. And I see several people saying thank you for the opportunity to discuss and to learn about the things we talked about in this book. And as we saw, the learning continues. It sounds like you're going to go forward and share this book and your conversations with others. So I wish you well in that always.